And certainly feel inside the walls of the Constitutional Court that a significant milestone is set to unfold in less than an hour before the Constitutional Court, as we take it back to that December 2022 decision to reject that Section 89 independent panel report and effectively shielded the President from accountability with respect to the Phala Phala saga, that is the theft of foreign currency at his Limpopo farm. Now, often the party that gets left out of the conversation in terms of this bid to revive the Phala Phala saga is the ATM, who actually were one of the first to table that motion when that battle began about the discussion on the reasons that were used to squash the report. And I think in the main it was a balance between this question of prima facie evidence and sufficient evidence, with the latter being considered something that was absent from that independent panel report. And you disagreed with that analysis, because what that adoption would have allowed is for Parliament to continue in its constitutional obligations and investigate it further, call in further witnesses, come up with their own conclusions before, if any, taking that action of an impeachment inquiry.
Look, what Parliament was supposed to do in December 2022, it was to adopt a resolution that would have set up an impeachment inquiry. And I want to emphasize the word inquiry. An inquiry will be an instance whereby it could either clear the President of any wrongdoing or find him guilty. But the subject of the matter is an inquiry. Now, to have Parliament basically rejecting a report that is coming from legal experts, which includes a former Chief Justice that found there is a case to answer. There is no rational decision that could have led Parliament to then say, we are not going to probe further. Because a probe, that is what a probe should be, to investigate whether what has been said to be sufficient evidence that there might be wrongdoing. You then get a conclusion whether there is wrongdoing and there's no wrongdoing. And the other issue here is that it becomes problematic then for the people not to understand that when it comes to Parliament, there is a clear constitutional directive in terms of Section 42(3) of the Constitution. The mandate of Parliament is to scrutinize and, play an oversight role over the executive. And I can tell you now, with what has transpired just in Parliament alone, put aside the other institution, no one can say Parliament has fulfilled its constitutional obligation of scrutinizing the executive. Because what has happened? There is no ad hoc committee that is set to examine the matter. What we had was a report that says there is a case to answer, but the majority, which is the ANC at the time, used their majority to block any form of scrutiny over the President. And that is what the crisis is about. It's about an ANC using a majority to block any form of scrutiny. Because you can't be in a country where the head of state cannot be scrutinized over his decisions.
Indeed, and I remember at the time of the release of the panel report, it was seen as something that was a foregone conclusion. It's important that you're mentioning that the report would have paved the way for Parliament to exercise its constitutional obligations and investigate the matter further. But you were robbed of that particular opportunity when that report was squashed.
Indeed, if you were to remember the arguments by the ANC, they were saying that report is legally flawed. However, you can't have politicians to somewhat think that they can overturn a report that has been done by an independent panel of legal experts, because it is not in their jurisdiction. They do not have the capabilities to do that. It is only a court of law that can do that. Now, if you were to look at it, in 2022, that is what they were saying, that President Ramaphosa is going to challenge the report. However, as we sit here now, that report is still binding. There's no court of law that has said that report, it is flawed as per the ANC's political argument on the day. That is why today it is very important, therefore, for the court to really bring back sanity in terms of the role of the Parliament when it comes to holding the executive accountable and finding a way to really constrain political machinations that may be done by people who are going to protect their presidents instead of affirming what the Constitution requires.
Indeed. Let's look at the possible scenarios today, maybe the first one being one that if it favors you and this report gets sent back to Parliament. We know that we're now in the 7th Parliament. You're looking at a whole different political landscape, which has its own implications. How do you see that playing out with the current circumstances that you find politics facing in South Africa? It's no longer a majority. We are looking at multiple different collaborations, if we could put it that way. How then does that play out as this process is heavily reliant on a majority vote in order for it to be successful?
You know, the ruling, it's not going to be about ATM or EFF. It must be about the people of South Africa and their constitution. So what is standing between the Constitutional Court now, it's not EFF, it's not ATM, it's the people of South Africa and the Constitution that requires all of us, you know, because we are bound by the Constitution. It's the Constitution that brings the nation together. It's a Constitution that actually anchors any democratic order. Now, any party in Parliament that took an oath to be faithful to the Constitution, it cannot be that the Constitutional Court said you made a mistake or you took an irrational decision in December 2022 when you did not proceed with an inquiry. There is no rational party in Parliament that can come back and say they are going to vote against that particular court judgment. And also, parties in the GNU, they signed a statement of intent. Their own commitment is to abide by the Constitution. It is the rule of law. Therefore, they test whether they are truly honest individuals in those parties. And this statement of intent indeed is about the people, will be seen if they somewhat change their minds when it comes to how then do they vote in Parliament. Because this thing, I want to make it a point, there's a difference between a motion of no confidence because it speaks to a performance of a president, yet a Section 89 process speaks to violations of the Constitution by the president, meaning it's more legal, it is wrongdoing, it is misconduct. Therefore, you can't then say you want to live in a constitutional order, yet you are going to vote against a process that will restore order when it comes to holding the president accountable, because that legal process requires us as Parliament and as members of Parliament to really act in a manner that is consistent with the Constitution.
And lastly, in the alternative, should you not be successful, what's next for the ATM, as the Phala Phala Farm saga seems to be an issue that refuses to go away?
Look, if the court today were to violate the Constitution, issue a judgment that goes against established principles. Remember 2017 Kandla Constitutional Court matter regarding the Public Protector report. The principles were set there. There's no new thing. We already know Parliament, the Constitutional Court in 2017 said these are the standards to be met when holding the president accountable. This is the constitutional role of Parliament in relation to oversight. So should this court go against that particular ruling that set somewhat a precedence on how matters like these should be adjudicated, it means South African citizens have got no other alternative, but we need to take it to the streets. We need to fight to defend the constitutional order, because there will never be order when the people that occupy the highest office in the land get to violate the Constitution, commit misconduct and abuse their powers, and this court protects them. And yet me and you, as Busiso in the street, is supposed to be law-abiding. We can't allow a South African a case whereby there's laws for the ordinary and other laws for the powerful political players. Therefore, if this court does not do what the Constitution requires of it, then it means there's no other way. We need to take it to the street, because we owe it to our South African citizens and our future generations to protect a democratic order, because if we let it slide, then it means we're going to go towards being in a dictatorship, whereby the ones that are in power can do anything, violate the Constitution, but nothing is going to happen. Because let's talk about his violations of the money exchange regulations. If you have more than 25,000, you have to bank it. He did not do that. If you receive foreign currency, you need to bank it and declare to the Reserve Bank within 30 days. He did not do that. Why then is it becoming like something as if it's a witch hunt? It's not a witch hunt. It is him who violated the Constitution. Therefore, we can't allow a president to violate the law because he's not the last president. The next president must learn that if you occupy that office, you will be held accountable. Therefore, exercise your power, your public power that is given to you in a manner that is answerable to the public and that takes into account that the people must come first and you need to abide by the Constitution because the head of state is a first citizen. And as a first citizen, he needs to be the primary example of abiding by the Constitution. If he does not do that and the court allows that and the citizens will keep quiet, then we can't cry if we become a dictatorship like the other countries that we see.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zungula there, the ATM leader, setting the stakes and quite high expectations on the Constitutional Court this morning as they are set to deliver that all-important judgment on the core question of whether or not these political parties exercise their political power or did they betray their constitutional obligations. We'll find out what the answer is at 10 a.m. when that judgment is delivered.